So, Senator, I'd want to understand the context around extent possible.
It's a letter you signed, so you know the context.
So again, Senator, I don't have it in front of me, and I didn't have a memory of the specifics. Releases need to be...
Give a witness a copy of the letter, which is right there. You'll have it in front of you in about 10 seconds. You signed this letter March 19th of 2020. That was 3 years ago. You did not disclose this letter to the committee. Why did you not disclose it to the committee?
So, Senator, I have no memory of signing that letter. It sounds like it was right at the start of the pandemic. So I apologize. I made every effort to try to find anything that was responsive.
So I guess if you have no memory, you didn't consider it that big a deal, I'm assuming?
Senator, I'm just not sure. It's not something I remember signing. I don't doubt that.
All right.
That
Well, I want to talk about this letter because it's an extraordinary letter. This is not, I know the chairman and Senator Booker were trying to rehabilitate you by saying, well, lots of people did humanitarian release for some people incarcerated. That's true. But this letter is not within the bounds of the mainstream. This letter is actually quite extreme. This letter begins with the undersigned organizations and individuals call on Governor Lamont to act immediately to protect the lives of incarcerated people in our state. 3 urgent steps are needed: the immediate release of as many people in custody as possible. 2, a moratorium on new admissions into jails and prisons. Do you think a moratorium on new admissions into jails and prisons, is that a policy you support?
So, Senator, again, I don't have the letter in front of me to understand the context, but I know there were efforts to reduce new admissions, but there are obviously some people who would present a public safety risk.
But your letter didn't say that, and I want to read from this letter because it is an astonishing letter. The second page: we call upon Governor Lamont, the state of Connecticut, and all Connecticut jurisdictions to, 1, immediately release to the maximum extent possible people incarcerated pre-trial and post-conviction. We recognize that jails and prisons are not safe and do not promote well-being for anyone. The global COVID-19 pandemic is throwing into sharp relief the untenable size of our penal system and the need for sustained action to shrink its scale, size, and scope. This next sentence is underlined. We outline below a few considerations to initiate state action and emphasize they do not preclude the release of groups not explicitly discussed in this letter. Do you think it was a good idea to, as this letter says, quote, immediately release to the maximum extent possible people incarcerated pre-trial and post-conviction?
So, Senator, I'd want to understand the context around extent possible.
It's a letter you signed, so you know the context.
So again, Senator, I don't have it in front of me, and I didn't have a memory of the specifics. Releases need to be...
Give a witness a copy of the letter, which is right there. You'll have it in front of you in about 10 seconds.
Thank you, Senator. I do believe releases need to be consistent with public safety.
Okay, well, that's not what this letter says. The letter continues, pretrial release, quote, Governor Lamont should use his emergency powers to protect incarcerated people, their communities, and correctional staff by releasing all people, all who are incarcerated without having been convicted of any crime. All people means murderers. It means serial rapists. It means child molesters. Do you think it is remotely reasonable to call upon the governor to release every murderer in the state of Connecticut prior to conviction, to essentially eliminate pretrial incarceration?
So I think, Senator, that releases should be consistent with public safety.
But that's not what you said. The letter doesn't say that. It's all.
Were I so fortunate to be confirmed as a judge, I would strictly follow the Bail Reform Act, which includes preventative detention.
But that's not remotely this letter. All right, the next page. You also call on the governor to do this, and this is a quote, declare a moratorium on incarceration. Governor Lamont should issue an executive order to direct the state attorney's offices and law enforcement entities, including town and city police departments, and any federal law enforcement entity operating within the state to immediately cease adding to the incarcerated population, given the high risk posed by population increase, both to those already incarcerated and to those entering correctional facilities. Public officials with authority to set bail, including judges, and you're nominated to be a judge, bail staff and police officers should maximize release on personal recognizance. Do you think it is a good idea to declare a moratorium on incarceration and to say in Connecticut, we are no longer arresting anybody? Because that's what your letter says.
So, Senator, as I heard it, it was urging a sort of to the extent possible. And I guess, you know, my view at that time with the pandemic is, and I know that the
It doesn't say to the extent possible. It says all. And let me ask you, you're a law professor. You signed a letter asking the governor of the state of Connecticut to issue an executive order ordering federal law enforcement to cease adding to the incarcerated population in the state. Is there any plausible constitutional justification for a governor ordering the feds, you are no longer allowed to incarcerate anyone in our state?
I would assume, Senator, that was a reference to using state
No,
facilities.
doesn't say that.
So again, Senator, I think that this appears to be a letter that was
So lots of people signed something kooky, but lots of people haven't been nominated to be a judge. The last thing you say is you call on Connecticut to release illegal aliens and not refer them to ICE, to release them all. Is that a policy you support, releasing every illegal alien as well, in addition to releasing murderers and rapists and child molesters?
So, Senator, I think the letter, it sounds like, was at the start of the pandemic and was looking at potential solutions that the systemic type code within the jails that's threatening both people incarcerated as well as staff. I will say, were I fortunate to be confirmed, I would treat very seriously the laws, the statutes that Congress has written that govern findings of Supreme Court for the Second Circuit.
3 years ago, you did not.